Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women's Public Leadership Network's Facebook Live, our leadership spotlight for the month of July. Each month, we try and highlight an outstanding woman in public leadership, hear a little bit about her leadership journey, and hope to inspire future public leaders like some of you watching. So this month, I'm so honored to be joined by City Attorney of Seattle, Ann Davison. Ann Davison is the first female city attorney, the first mother to hold the highest legal office in the city of Seattle government. Since being elected, City Attorney Davison is focused on returning real-time accountability to the Seattle's criminal justice system, and is committed to working with all members of the city's community to reduce crime, enforce our laws and values. So we're so honored to be joined by you, City Attorney Davison. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me, Maureen. It's great to be with everyone. And thanks for all the viewers and listeners who are joining in for a few moments to stop and think about leadership and women and how we really can be influential in shaping our world around us. So I'm really honored to be here.
Absolutely. And we like to explore through this program how you got to the position that you're currently in, what drives your personal leadership journey. Your position in particular requires so many different skills to be successful. So what positions have you held up until this point that helped prepare you for this position?
I love that question. And really, honestly, I hadn't thought about that question beforehand. This was not a professional destination that I had planned for myself. So it wasn't as if I had laid out things that I thought would be necessary in order to be a leader in public service. It really was just an individual passion and drive on issues specific, and frankly, that had come to life as a mother, having to try to explain in age-appropriate language to my young children's direct questions is really what drove me into this. But some of the positions that I found that have been really helpful now and looking back, there's some that are just more straightforward that people might expect. They were being a soccer coach for my daughter and her team. It was also my work in professional sports, having joined a team that had a lot of synchronicity going on, and it was palpable that people knew their roles and why their roles were important to the overall goal of winning games. I worked for the Seattle Supersonics, and that was really it was the easy goal to attain. We needed to win games. We needed to win playoff games. And I was thankful I got to join the year that we went to the NBA finals. And so it really was something that we could feel. We all knew our role was important. I had worked in government and constituent services. So some of my main work there, in addition to my early years, what I thought I wanted to focus on, which was crisis relief work, and specifically with refugees, is really a servant mind. And that's been the main part that I've seen is really important in leading, is really about what are we getting done? It's not about being in the front. It is about what is the work behind the scenes that's done and how can that dialogue get put forward so we can make better decisions as leaders. That's really been, for me, the most impactful for this position, is that it's about service.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that sort of goes into my next question, which is at what point did you realize that this public service, and I love that you use that word service, because that's really how we view it. And so many of the women across our network are stepping up to serve and they feel called into this. At what point did you realize that was going to stay an element in your career? Did you consider other paths? Did you consider staying in the private sector?
Well, it was interesting because, as I said, in my early adult life, I really had thought it was going to be very specific work, just where I felt called to going to places where everybody else was leaving. And so in that a description that is refugees, where people are fleeing because of maybe natural disasters or war zones. And so those who are physically and economically able to leave had already done so, but the truly most vulnerable were left behind to handle the situation on the ground. And that was the space that I felt I really was supposed to be working within. Some describe that as Seattle today, where people were leaving for a number of reasons. Some also describe that as politics in general because of the way that it has come about to be portrayed in with a lot of vindictiveness and frankly not a lot of leadership in my opinion. So in a way, it's still that same type of a space. It's a space that people have been not wanting to take their skill set in, and they stay in the private sector. And really, we have to be going into those areas that are neglected, that are overlooked, that people don't want to participate in. That's really where, for me, the leadership moments are, and the opportunities for making change start within those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so beautiful how you put, wanting to go to the places where people are leaving. And I hope that really resonates with some folks watching. Shifting over to really the practicality of being a leader and being in this position and taking up this task and call to service, what skills do you think are non-negotiable in your specific position or in leadership generally?
Well, it is the notion of servant leadership, as I described, and I know there's several books out there. I just really have. I think that's just has to be there. Again, if somebody is looking to be a leader because they see themselves as kind of a focal point, or any other use of it, it is not going to be something that makes a lot of change. I lead a department of around 200 people, so I'm not only just leading on issues here, but I do take seriously that I get to change the culture within the office, and that is to instill with them, everybody, from our professional support staff to our attorneys giving advice to those litigators that are in the courtroom defending the city. It is about understanding the mission that I've been placed here by the voters. And that, to me, goes on with servant leadership. We are here to serve. We are here to do things that are not necessarily easy, but it is necessary for us to do that role. An additional part is courage. People need to have courage, particularly women need to know you shouldn't be waiting around for someone to ask. Taking the initiative is the right thing to do. If you have an issue that you are personally thinking about a lot, that is where you should be looking to go. And to me, those combined, servant leadership and courage, really are the necessary steps for becoming a leader.
Absolutely. That's great. And as we are, as a network, WPLN, building out, opportunities for folks to develop their skills, to understand these and see these qualities in themselves, we're also building a network of support for women as they're running, especially those that may identify as center or right-leaning. Did you have any mentors or women that helped you up along this path and your journey? And if so, sort of what made them mentors to you? Was it a real formal conversation, or is it just a role that they started to naturally fill for you?
Well, I do think that I've kind of found my own way. It is, when I reflecting on that question, made me somewhat sad that there weren't a lot of other women that were available, or at least not visible. There were a lot of women lawyers. They weren't in politics that I had access to. There was lots of women that were concerned about the same issues I was concerned about. I had conversations with lots of mothers that had the same types of concerns I was talking about. But really, the women that I found that helped me along the way were, again, those service-oriented women that helped me behind the scenes. Women, that helped me be here, that helped me get to events, that helped me go to door knock. Those were really the people that motivated me and helped me. It was men and women. I'm the mother of a son and a daughter. I want to make sure they both feel they have a place and a future in our world. But so it wasn't anything formal. Again, I see a lot of women that take the service role. Maybe it's, again, because it's an area that's of need, or they just don't think their place is at the front. But when there's an obvious vacuum and nobody is speaking in a way that is focused on servant and leadership together, that's when women really should step forward specifically, because they often will have that service role that I've seen behind the scenes in women that have supported me along the way.
And so off of that, why do you think that support that you had from those women behind the scenes is so important? And I guess, what would you do to encourage folks to sort of step into that role for one another?
I think it, again, is feeling connected to a mission, to a purpose and a goal. And when I was able to articulate the three things I was really fixated on within the city to impact as far as local politics and local decision making, so many women had identified with those issues as well. And it was specifically about public safety, it was about homelessness, and it was about addiction and recovery. And those are really often intermingled issues, but those were the reasons that I started to initially become civically engaged. And for this specific position specifically, obviously it has so much to do with public safety when victims of crime are often women. And that's a significant issue that I am focused on and that I know many of them wanted to see improvement on. I was at an event last night and a woman stopped me on the way out and she just thanked me so much. It's really quite overwhelming to hear this from everyday people that they said they noticed such a difference when I took over this position. And to me, that means the world, because someone that I didn't know actually noticed change in the city from me following the passions that I have, that I wake up and just think about these issues. And I don't even feel like it's work. It's just what I naturally think about when I'm running or, in the car taking kids somewhere. These are the things I always think about. And for someone who has not had a conversation with me actually say they had noticed positive change just made it so worth it.
Absolutely. That's tremendous. And that's got to be such an amazing feeling to just know that you're making an impact in folks' lives. And I'm sure beyond that one woman who's able to express that to you, you are making such a positive impact in the lives of folks in Seattle. So what challenges do you think specifically face, women like you in terms of getting into the political process? Other, women that may identify as center right leaning. I know I see that Katie from Represent Women dropped in a link to some of their research on these barriers specifically, but what do you sort of see and feel as barriers to public leadership for women like you?
Well, it is hard being a mother and being a working mother, and that is just the case all the way around. Mothers do tend to have a lot more of the child rearing responsibilities, and whether that's mapped out or not, it just tends to be just kiddos sometimes want their moms a little bit more. Certainly not to say anything that about fathers are not super important, but it does, for me, it was a difficult part to navigate, trying to figure out where they can be and also feel like they're a part of what I was doing, but also provide their privacy and provide them, if they don't want to be a part of, to be known that they can have some privacy and have their own journey. So that was one that I felt was significant. But when, again, you're thinking about what are you trying to do? And really, I was trying to impact the world that my children were growing up in. And so to me, it really was a lesson to say to them, well, we can have conversations and that can be the end of it, or I can actually apply the skills that I think that I can use to improve problems that we are talking about, and then be an example for my children. So to me, that was really a win all the way around. It had some inconveniences at time, but in the long run, that's a benefit. And I also think it's about just knowing yourself, having self-awareness about what you are, again, the issues you think about all the time, just naturally. Those are the things that you should then discover what positions have influence on those issues, because then it really does not feel like you're pursuing a job or it is work when you're there. I am so thankful that for me personally, I am the most happy I've ever been professionally. And again, I say that as having an office that overlooked an MBA team practicing and government constituent services. I taught English in Northern Thailand. I've been in private practice as a lawyer. I've had a wide variety of unusual jobs, but really for me, I just don't feel like I'm doing a job or work. It is such a pleasure doing every bit of my job that I'm so immensely thankful. So having the self-awareness for oneself before you pursue a position, to make sure that the issues that it influences match with yourself, so you know yourself, really is one of the most easy things to remove as a barrier, but one of the necessary things.
Absolutely. I want to sort of call on two things. I recently was having a conversation with a candidate for state rep in Louisiana, and she said, we asked, what are some of the things that held you back from running for officer? What hold you back? She's like, well, my kids. Well, what's the prime motivator? Well, my kids, so it is both sides of that coin, especially as a mother. And even just by setting the example of being a mother in office, doing this job in particular, I think is so important. I also really appreciate what you said about just considering where your passions lie and the impact that you can have in the office you should run for. This is something that we do cover a lot in our trainings. And for anybody that may be watching and sort of wants a little bit more on how they can consider that sort of matrix of skills, impact, level, and also time commitment of each office, I would definitely point them towards our training resources online. Through our online platform. So we'll drop that in the chat as well for anybody that's watching this after the fact. So with that, I mean, those were great tips, especially in terms of just being self-aware, evaluating that initial decision. What other tips would you give to those who are starting out their journey? They've made the decision that this is something they want to pursue. What's some advice that you have for them?
I think this answer again was one that was interesting to reflect on this question. And to me, it came about to imagine the worst case scenario, the worst outcome, whatever, and that's going to be different for every person. But you decide to do it and then take yourself mentally through to the absolute worst outcome you can imagine. And then if that is what would occur, are you still okay with the decision that you made to do it? And once I really had gone through that mental journey for myself, running for a different position earlier that I did not win, to me, I was able to then articulate that the process of running actually had enough value that the outcome, regardless if it was the worst case scenario, it still would have enough value for me to pursue it. And so it was really freeing for me to then be fully committed to the process. Some people are the destination person, and some people really do enjoy the journey. Truly, I'm a little bit more of the destination person when it comes to logistics and life, because you've got to be able to get kid A to this point on time so you can get kid B to the next point online. So you have to be destination focused. But transitioning that for myself mentally to just understand that even that process was going to have significant value for me, and what I was able to then talk about through the campaign, that made it just so freeing and able to then be okay with whatever the outcome was. And I am thankful that I did that process. I am actually thankful that I didn't win that position. Actually quite thankful. And then I did a second one in a row. This was my third campaign 3 years in a row. And so I knew I had a long distance running, mental capacity for a lot of stamina. And I've focused on those same issues, and so it didn't tire me out. It actually fueled me. It gave me a lot of energy through the process. So it was not difficult to do. But that was really, for me, the most important thing, was to be able to be okay with the outcome and know that it was still going to be a valuable use of my time and time away from my children in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too, to share that not every campaign is going to be a winning campaign. We like to help women sort of think through, we don't want you to run a campaign you can't win, but to not let that fear sort of be overwhelming or be a barrier in and of itself. So looking back on these last couple of campaigns, I think I have a sense of the answer, but is it worth it? Would you say to women out there that it is worth it to do this process?
I think that for me, I know it was worth it. It absolutely was worth it. Again, when I sought this one, a lot of people in the political industry, because there is an industry of consultants, many people said, what? And didn't think that this was possible. And some had actually all advised against it. But I knew that the issues that I was so focused on we're not going to see improvement if I were not talking about the way I was talking about them. And so for me, it was just so overwhelmingly focused on the issues and nothing else. And I don't deviate from those issues. I really stay focused on the ones that I campaigned on, because those are the ones that drive me internally. So it really was completely worth it. And again, having done that mental work beforehand to be prepared and be able to make plans for next steps if need be, but otherwise enjoying the way and the process, and meeting people and having conversations, hearing appreciation, having dialogue, learning, lots of learning and listening. it's absolutely worth it. And if you enjoy door knocking like I do, then you already know you're probably built for it, because engaging with people, letting them know that they matter, that you want to hear what's important to them, it really does mean something to the everyday person. And the amount of gratitude that I heard just as a candidate was overwhelming, and I didn't expect that. And so that has been, for me, that made it so worth it. And then being able to be influential in the issues now, obviously, is even more so.
That's great. So what are you looking to do in the next phase of your leadership journey? Is there an experience you're hoping to have, an expertise you'd like to get, knowing that your journey doesn't stop here once you're in office?
It doesn't stop once you're here, and it is really a great evolution to kind of watch what comes across my path in uncovering problems that, when I had the ones I initially were focused on, slowly walking through systems to see where there are system gaps that really don't take any money or much money, and maybe not a lot of people power, but just need some connections to actually then make these system gaps close and be smaller so it can function better for society. And in addition to that, long-term problems that really are going to take a lot of work and a lot of involvement of stakeholders, and explaining to the public in a way that is unpacking the issue for everyday people. Because I work in the legal field, and so it's sometimes more complicated than maybe it needs to be. There's a lot of lawyers in America, and sometimes our legal landscape is quite complex. But understanding it from an everyday person viewpoint and what they're experiencing from the social systems that we have created to serve roles for society, understanding how they experience those systems is really important. And then it helps me identify areas that I can be influential in. I am the only elected city attorney in the state of Washington, and there's not very many of us across the country. Most are appointed by mayor and city council. And so it does provide a platform of speaking about public safety and issues like that are not at the availability of other city attorneys. And really, for safety, it is at the local level that is the most impactful. So growing that knowledge, that civic education that a lot of people are lacking, is part of what I feel is the role that I'm in now. In addition to that, it was not on my sights to be that, but I think it's crucially important. Because people do want to feel safe. It's a subjective sense. But we need to see that our systems are working and functioning, and people are doing the roles they are supposed to do within our society fully, and not any more than they should, and not underserving in those roles. So that's been an important part for me in building collaborative relationships, really, really true working relationships that are beyond just me as a person, but that are departments or intergovernmental operations that are going to last long past my being here, I hope, because it does serve the system overall to function for the city and for society.
That's great. Yeah, super appreciate having you on from this position in particular, because as you mentioned, it's not the most well-known position. It's pretty unique, and it's unique that it is elected in Seattle. And so I do hope that folks watching sort of take a look at their city. You probably don't know the name of your city attorney, and you probably should. So go and take a look at whether that person's elected or appointed. And if you have a legal background, know that this is a path that you could pursue. I think that's so important to sort of open up these possibilities, because so many women, will encourage them to run for office, and they're not ready to be congresswomen. And that's okay, because there is a lot of real work that gets done in between city council and Congress. So we're really grateful to sort of hear more about your position. I want to leave, you the opportunity to just give any last thoughts, advice, really anything else before we wrap up. And we so appreciate your time. And if anyone has additional questions, maybe they're watching this after the fact and weren't able to join us live, you can always shoot those questions over to us at hello@womenspublicleadership.net. We'd be happy to pass them along and sort of continue these kinds of conversations with you all. So the floor is yours for any sort of last thoughts, advice, warnings, friendly, Yeah.
I don't think I give warnings. I do give encouragement, I hope, because it really is a joy to be in a position like this with public service as the goal. And I guess I would just say part of a leader really is identifying people's skill sets and needs that you have, whether that be within your own office that you're staffing or throughout the system that you are a part of. And again, that's where I rely on being my daughter's soccer coach. I played soccer all growing up and at Baylor, but I never really thought that that would provide something that was really an important part. But again, as I talked about my time with the Sonics, I could identify when there was really a coach that really knew how to keep things together and management that really understood how to really focus us all, and then when there wasn't. And so I really do think that's an important part to hone in, is to be able to quickly identify how are people that are approaching you really, how can you plug them in? And so they feel connected to the mission, they feel connected to the goal, and they understand how they can support getting there. And it really does widen the opportunities for people to join in the service and to become leaders themselves. And you create a place for mentoring along the way. It's super exciting, and it makes me really happy when people join us and feel a part of that. And that's a skill that I think you need to hone in if you don't think you have it already.
Awesome. So, and for anyone watching, I mean, I myself am a rugby player, rugby coach for
Wow.
boys. So if you're not already adding, if you're out there and you're coaching in your community, add it as a bullet point on the list of reasons why you can run for office, should run for office, are qualified to run for office. It's so great to hear from you with your incredible experience today. Congratulations on the success that you've had in terms of getting this position in public service, and we're really grateful that leaders like you are out there serving in your community and also are willing to lend their time to us. I'm really excited for folks to see this interview, and I'm really grateful to you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. You often don't get to slow down and just talk about how you got, how I got here. So I really do appreciate the time to just pause long enough to think about it and reflect. And that's been quite meaningful to me personally. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you to all of you who tuned in and are maybe watching this after the fact as well. And we do 2 monthly Facebook Lives, Leadership Spotlight, as well as a Tips from the Trail, where we give a little bit more practical skills and knowledge around the political process. So we hope that you join us for future events as well. And we hope to see you all soon. Thank you.